Good evening, everyone. My pronouns to respected dignitaries, Professor D.K. Mishra, Professor Trilokhan Shastri, and my namaskar to all of you. So today we gather here for the day 2 lecture of Vivekananda Youth Leadership Convention. So I request both of the professors to offer flowers to Swamiji. Before starting the lecture, for those who are new for the today talk, I want you to get acquainted what Vivekananda Samiti is and what we do. So we are one of the oldest club here in Students Gymkhana, IIT Kanpur. Not only in IIT Kanpur but across all other IITs, we are the oldest one to start such a club. So functioning for over 52 years, Vivekananda Samiti has been engaging not only students but entire IIT Kanpur campus community and motivating them towards the path of human excellence. It has been disseminating and trying to actualize the messages of Vedanta and Swami Vivekananda. We do different activities of social and modern significance. To name a few, weekly classes of meditation and Bhagavad Gita, invited lectures on Indian philosophy and its relevance to the human life, community services like health camps, eye camps, clothes collection drive. Okay, and we are here to inspire the students to imbibe human values in their lives. One of the finest endeavor of Vivekananda Samiti is to provide a chance for entire campus community to interact with personalities who have greater insight of life. Every year on the occasion of birth anniversary of Swami Vivekananda, we celebrate Vivekananda Youth Leadership Convention. So this year we are celebrating VYLC 2020 on the occasion of 158th birth anniversary of Swamiji. So yesterday we got to listen a beautiful lecture by Prabhurajika Vidyananda Prana. So today we have a lecture by Professor Trilokhan Shastri and we are very privileged to have him here. So let me introduce first about Professor Trilokhan Shastri. So Professor Shastri is a renowned professor from IIM Bangalore working in decision science area. He received his BTech in electrical engineering from IIT Delhi and MBA from IIM Ahmedabad and a doctorate degree in operations research from MIT. Since then, he has held several teaching positions in institutes of world repute. After teaching at IIM Ahmedabad for many years, he moved to IIM Bangalore, where he served as dean and continues to teach there. He was also on the board of member of IIM Bangalore and National Bank of Agriculture and Rural Development. Professor Shastri has been deeply involved with several civil society initiatives and movements. In 1999, he founded the Association for Democratic Reforms, an organization that works towards bringing in electoral and political reforms. Professor Shastri is also the founder and CEO of Center for Collective Development that works with over 30,000 farmers, promotes their cooperatives, enabling them to earn higher income without any subsidies. He is also the founder of Farm Veda, a social venture that gives all profits to farmers. He has also been a visiting professor at International University of Japan, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology and MIT. And he has also served as the Associate Dean of Research, Indian School of Business, Hyderabad. Professor Shastri, for his significant work and contributions, have received numerous awards like Distinguished Alumnus Award from IIT Delhi, Toastmasters International Award, Young Global Leader Award from World Economic Forum, Outstanding Contribution to National Development Award from IIT Delhi Alumni Association, Best Young Teacher Award from Association of Indian Management Schools. Our own institute, IIT Kanpur, conferred upon him the prestigious Satyendra Kumar Dubey Memorial Award for his contributions to bringing out transparency in public life. Okay, today we are going to have a lecture by him. Now I invite Professor Shastri to come and enlighten us on the topic practicing Karma Yoga in the light of Swami Vivekananda's teachings.
Good evening. It's an honor to be here at IIT Kanpur, and special thanks to Venkatramana Vivekananda Samiti and IIT Kanpur for the opportunity to be here. It's also a lot of fun and joy to me personally to speak about this topic. You will discover why. So, it is a little daunting to speak on a subject which is universally known. So can I ask a simple question? How many of you have read the complete works of Swami Vivekananda? Okay, that makes my job easy. I won't be repetitive. And how many of you have read the life of Vivekananda? Okay, a few of you have read. Hopefully everybody has heard of him, that's why you are here. So, before we get lost in details, I will just tell you in a couple of sentences what we want to say here about Karma Yoga. So I am just going to read out what Vivekananda himself said. So you all know the motto of the Ramakrishna Mission, Atmano Mokshartham Jagat Hitaya Cha. In Sanskrit it literally means that for one's own salvation, Atmano Mokshartham, and for the good of the world. The essence of Karma Yoga is there in that motto itself, that whatever you do for your own salvation and for the good of the world. And he defines it in three unselfishness is spirituality. If you read, he has written I think those books are there. I would recommend that you read that book, Karma Yoga. Yeah, it's lying there. It's only 113 or 114 pages. But one request, if you read that book, all of you are engineering students. When you say 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, anybody can understand. When you say a to the power of n plus b to the power of n is equal to c to the power of n, has no integer solutions for n greater than 3, it becomes a Fermat's theorem. And it took 100 years to prove that. So you have to reflect. So the point I'm making is, if you read that book, although it's very short, you have to read it a few times and imbibe it. Then you'll get something out of it, because Vivekananda himself is saying that. And I will quote one more thing, because we are in Uttar Pradesh and not very far from Kanpur. Gautam Buddha said, Bahujana Hitaya, Bahujana Sukhaya. It means for the good of all, for the welfare of all. So what is the guide to action? Bahujan Hitaya, Bahujan Sukhaya. You act in such a way that it is good for all and for the welfare of all. That is the essence of what we want to say. But we'll have to speak into some details. So I will speak about 4 or 5 issues. That a little bit about what is this Vivekananda and why should we bother to listen to him and what he has said. Number 2 is, he said his special contribution is Karma Yoga. So I'll give you some stories about people who were influenced by him and what kind of life they have led. And then a little bit from his writings only about why Karma Yoga, how does it help us in our spiritual life, if it does, and why should we do it, and how do you practice it. It's nothing very complicated, these are all simple things. And is it only for monks? Yesterday we had a wonderful talk by Divya Pranananda ji. I had the privilege of attending. She gave a very fine talk. And I believe Swami Atma Shraddhananda ji is also coming. So is it only for monks, or can all of us ordinary human beings also follow it, and does it help us? So that is something that I would like to say a little bit about. And are there any preparations that are required for doing this? So that's what I will do. And I have been instructed by him that I should not speak too long and allow some time for discussion. Is that fair enough? Okay. So let's start with, Vivekananda is a very giant personality and a lot of people have written many things, but with respect to today's discussion on Karma Yoga, I would like to highlight 4 or 5 aspects of Swamiji, as they call him. Right here from IIT Kanpur, I think many of you are aware, 2 of your toppers or gold medalists have become sannyasis in the Ramakrishna Mission. Are you aware of it? One is Shirish Jadhav, who is now known as Swami Sarvottamananda. We had the privilege of meeting him because I stayed in Belur Math for 1 year. And Mahan Mitra, who is now known as Swami Vidyanathananda, who is now not only a monk but an award-winning mathematician and also a gold medalist topper, etc., winner of the Infosys Science Prize, and so on. So why do such people of outstanding caliber, I mean, two of your toppers from IIT Kanpur, why are they influenced by Vivekananda? Because I know them personally, and it is Vivekananda who has asked them to lead, who has kind of influenced them. Are they fools? Are they influenced by somebody because he's a rock star? No, they are very intelligent people. They have taken the decision. So what is this man and why does he influence such people of high caliber? One has to think. You can Google, you can write down the name. Mahan MJ, M-A-H-A-N, MJ, he calls himself Mahan MJ, or Swami Vidyanathananda, and Shirish Jadhav. Both are well known in this campus maybe a few years ago. So why were they influenced by Vivekananda? Try to figure out. Right here in India, Mahatma Gandhi, Subhash Chandra Bose, Jawaharlal Nehru, all kinds of people were influenced by. They have on record said that they have been inspired by Vivekananda. They have written about it. Christians, Muslims, Americans, English people, all over the world, people admire him. So what is this man? Max Muller admired him. Tolstoy admired him. Romain Rolland, Nobel Prize winning laureate. He got a Nobel Prize for literature. He wrote a life of Vivekananda. The first book I read on Vivekananda was Life of Vivekananda by Romain Rolland. So what is this? Aldous Huxley, famous film stars, Greta Garbo, so many people, they were all influenced by Swami Vivekananda. So what is this man? The man of universal admiration, even today. So I will try to highlight only 4 or 5 points that seem to be relevant for today's discussion. Sir, we thought we will start on time, so. Yeah. And we will be eager to hear your remarks a little later. Namaste. So, in the context of Karma Yoga, some 4 or 5 aspects of Vivekananda we wanted to highlight, only to give that what he's saying is worth it, not merely to praise him, but mainly. So, first thing that many people miss is that he's a spiritual giant. We go by the testimony of others. So, the first testimony of his stature is from Sri Ramakrishna himself. Then Holy Mother. Now you can say that the Ramakrishna mission will always praise Vivekananda, but people from outside also have. Sri Aurobindo had very many great things to say about Vivekananda. Aurobindo is also considered to be a great yogi. Ramana Maharshi said many great things about Vivekananda. Why we are quoting these other people is that they say that a man's spiritual stature cannot be known by ordinary people like you and me. Only the other great people can recognize. So we are saying that by reference, they say that he is one of the greatest. What the point really is that if a man is of that kind of spiritual stature, do his words have any power or meaning for us? So I leave that question there. Second thing is that a man of that stature, he was very active and dynamic. Normally you don't see like that. I mentioned Aurobindo and Ramana Maharshi, great yogis. He never left Pondicherry. This man never left Tiruvannamalai. They just stayed there for the rest of their lives. But Vivekananda went all over the world. And how much of work he has done, we will see a little bit, get a glimpse of it. It is very rare in the history of mankind to see a man of that stature, of that spiritual stature, doing so much of work, roaming around all over the world. The only example we can think of to some extent is Adi Shankaracharya. Other than that, we don't know of any such example. So that active dynamic, he combined the highest spiritual realization with active dynamic work. He was very multi-talented. That is something which is stunning if you read. You know, you're all from IIT. I also had the misfortune of studying at another IIT. We think we are very intelligent. I'll give you an instance. Towards the end of his young life, all the encyclopedia volumes, some 8 or 9 volumes were there, And somebody asked him, Swamiji, who can read all these things? He says, no, I have read them all. He says, who can remember? He says, check. So he randomly opens some volume and some page and he's repeating it verbatim. Some kind of a yogic power, they say that if he heard anything twice or read anything once, he could remember it. So that's a kind of a mind, a very pure mind. And he was good in music, he was good in writing, he was good in oratory. I mean, he had, Sri Ramakrishna says 16 Vidyas, he was a master of them all. In America, there's an instance where there is on the water which is going up and down, there are some eggshells. And he has never held a gun in his life and he is pointing and shooting them. Every time he is shooting it correctly. So man of multi-talents, very rare. You don't see such people. But one thing that really strikes, so there is a book in the complete works called Conversations with a Disciple. Guru Shishya Samvad is what they call it in Bengali. I don't know Bengali, but in English it's Conversations with a Disciple. Swami, what is his name? Sharat Chandra Chakravarti. He records it. So he says Vivekananda has come back from America and he is world famous, and in the mutt he is teaching Vedanta, and because he is a master of the scriptures, so he knows Sanskrit, he knows the scriptures, he has had spiritual realization, who better to teach? So he is discussing all this Vedanta with the brahmacharis and monks. Then suddenly Girish Ghosh comes in. Girish Ghosh is a Guru Bhai of Vivekananda and a disciple of Ramakrishna. By that time Sri Ramakrishna had passed away. So Girish says, Naren, there is a big famine in Bengal. Lots of people are dying. What does your Vedanta, what solution does it have for this? So Vivekananda closes the book, gets up and walks out. And he has got tears in his eyes. So then Girish Ghosh says to the brahmacharis that now you know why his Guru Sri Ramakrishna placed him at the highest. You people are dazzled by his intellect. But have you seen his heart? Uska dil dekha hai. Very, very full of love and compassion. That is one thing which drives this Karma Yoga, at least the way we read it. So that is something about Vivekananda, and that's why we are saying that we should pay some attention to what he is saying. And he himself said once that his special contribution is Karma Yoga. See, because everybody is not going to be a monk, everybody is not going to sit and do japam and tapas for hours and hours or years. But this is something almost anyone can do. And he made it simple. So let us discuss that a little bit. So I'll tell you some stories which I have heard, which are not there in the books. I heard it from the Ramakrishna Mission itself. So back in 1900, a young man went to Vivekananda. He said, give me sannyas. So he said, what is my Guru Dakshina? He was a brahmachari, what does he have? No money, nothing. So he said, I am your Guru Dakshina. So he said, very good, that's what I want. He said, you go to Haridwar and you go and serve. See, many people, sadhus, pilgrims, all sorts of devotees, they are going from Haridwar, Rishikesh to Badri, Kedarnath and all. It is full of malaria and tuberculosis. A lot of people are dying. There is nobody to care for them. It's very cold. There is no food. You go and serve them. And he said, forget about Bengal. So this man went there and he started doing exactly what his Guru has said, because he was very inspired by Vivekananda. So he used to collect all these people who were sick and give them food and medicines and so on. And he used to go and beg for money because they had no money Today Ramakrishna Mission is reasonably well off, but in those days there was no money. So you had to literally go and beg from the merchants and all in Haridwar and Rishikesh, please give us some money, I want to serve these people. Now, as a result, what happened is, if you go to Kankhal, there is one Sannyas Ashram road, there are lots of akhadas as they call it, lot of monasteries there. So it's a center, Haridwar, Rishikesh was and is still a center for so many monasteries. One of the bastions of monastic life. They all rejected him. His name was Swami Kalyananda. They rejected him and they said, "Ye bhangi sadhu hai." Bhangi means they clean toilets and they clean the, patients who are, in trouble and all that. So bhangi sadhu, so they are not really sadhus. But Kalyananda continued doing that. Now, this idea that a monk who is leading a spiritual life, who has renounced everything, will do seva, was revolutionary. It is still revolutionary for many people. Then what happened is, they were shunned. Then in the Kailash Math, which is a famous math in Rishikesh, there was one then abbot or Mathadipati called Dhanraj Giri. They sometimes have what they call bhandaras, where they invite swamis from other places to come for bhiksha or food, prasad. So they said, "Oh, Ramakrishna Mission, you call those people." So they said, no, they are not. He said, no, you call them. So they came, and Swami Kalyananda and the assistant called Nishyananda, they said, no, we will not come. So 3 times it happened. Then he said, "You please tell them that if they don't come, there will be no bhandara." So they came. So he made them sit on both sides and he addressed all the monks. And he said, when you go ill, when you become ill and sick, jab aap bimar hote ho, where do you go? Go to this ashram, this hospital set up by Kalyananda. Acha. When you were a baby, your mother cleaned you when you soiled yourself. Did she become a bhangi by doing that? So he said that these are the real sadhus. So then they got accepted back into the sadhu samaj. If you go to the Kankhal ashram today, in 1963, on the 100th anniversary of Vivekananda, the beautiful white marble statue. I thought the Ramakrishna Mission had installed it. No, उसके नीचे लिखा है हिंदी में कि तमाम साधु समाज की तरफ से परमहंस श्री विवेकानंद को अर्पित उनके शताब्दी के अवसर पर. So that is a prophet. The persons who were rejected for doing social work and bhangi work, the same sadhu samaj has accepted him today. Now, changing the thought current of the spiritual life of a nation is not a joke. Before Vivekananda, no monastery used to do social work. Today you see any monastery anywhere, not only Ramakrishna Mission, there are so many missions and monasteries. They all have some school, hospital, some social work they all have. It is all post-Vivekananda. So that is the importance that, at least for lay people like us, you can understand this Karma Yoga, why it is important. Now, some theory also, so we will discuss that a little bit. So I was just giving you a background of the kind of tapasya that not only he but many of his disciples and monks they did. There are many stories. Banaras was also set up like that. You can read the literature of the monks of the Ramakrishna Mission, what kind of seva they have done in the past. It's just amazing. Now, why do we need to do Karma Yoga? At a personal level, I feel it is very easy to do. It's not very difficult to do. Otherwise, you have to renounce the world, you have to do japam, you have to do meditation, you can't sit for 2 hours quietly. Then what is meditation, what is japa, what is jnana yoga, all those eternal questions will be there. And it is so simple that we don't believe it. So that's the reason I think. It makes you happy and it makes others happy. Now there is a bit of a theory behind it which Vivekananda himself talks about. So very briefly we'll talk about it. The first great exponent of Karma Yoga was Lord Krishna himself. All of you know about it. It is there in the Bhagavad Gita. You see Gautam Buddha doing that. Then later on, you see Jesus Christ saying it. We don't recognize it as a Karma Yoga. He says that love thy God with all thy heart and might and soul. That is the first commandment. And love thy neighbor as thyself. That is the second commandment. And he says the second commandment is greater than the first. Love thy neighbor. His exhortation to do Karma Yoga. Love thy neighbor as thyself. So, now the internal theory is what I have been able to understand, but maybe Swamiji will explain better. See, we are helplessly driven by unknown factors. We get angry, we get sad, we have emotions. So many things happen. Sometimes we don't even know why we are behaving like this, because these are deep-rooted impressions, they call it in the mind, subconscious, unconscious, whatever. In Hinduism or in our theory, we call it samskaras. Samskaras, we do not know till you are illumined, you don't know what your samskaras, but they make you do many, many things, and all of us are to some extent victims of that. What Vivekananda says is, by doing Karma Yoga properly, we'll discuss it a little bit more, you start countering it by creating good impressions. You set your character by creating good impressions. So you keep on doing good things, you create good impressions, and slowly the bad impressions get less and less attenuated, or sometimes they get transformed into good impressions. So he also says, but you have to go beyond the good impressions and you have to be detached. That is what Krishna also says. First you counter the bad impressions by doing good deeds. Then the good deeds, once they are established your character, you try to step back and do it in a detached way. Why do you do it in a detached way? Because then the impressions are not created on the mind. So he says, work like a master and not like a slave. So we are, in a Vedantic sense, we are all slaves. We are slaves to unknown thoughts and urges and ambitions and I don't know what all. So we just work like slaves. But when you work like a master, you step back, look at yourself in whatever you are, observe everything, and then you function like a master and not like a slave. So the Karma Yoga eventually helps you to do that. It's a long practice, but it is like, I don't know if some of you have ever run a marathon. When I was young, I was a little foolish. I also ran a couple of marathons. First day, I couldn't run more than 2 kilometers. But you keep running, and then, within 6 months at a young age, I found I could run a marathon. So Karma Yoga is also like that. There's nothing very difficult. You just, by repeated practice, the attitude of the mind gets set. So first thing is to think about, why am I doing it? So you can decide for yourself, but we'll discuss a few possible options of why we should do this. What is your motivation? In the Gita, they talk about duty. Do your duty in a detached way. Krishna emphasizes that. Vivekananda, because of the modern context, he actually emphasizes compassion. Of course, there is a very higher level where they say compassion is very condescending. Who are you to show compassion to others and all? That's true. They say you see the God in everybody and act with that. But at an ordinary level, it's difficult to do. So Holy Mother used to say, he who has no daya, he has no compassion, is not even a human being. So some people are moved by compassion, so they go and do some work for the society. Some people do it for fun. So yesterday, our friend here was telling me that one American who got benefited by doing some yoga and got some problems in some spine or something sorted out, or his shoulder, he was so grateful. He has made a series of films on yoga, but since he's an ace photographer, he did it purely for the love of it. That is Karma Yoga. That I want to give something back to society. I have this particular talent, so I will do that. Our friend Mahan, who is a great mathematician, he says that I do Saraswati Vandana by doing mathematics because that gives me fun. Some people are great. MS Subbulakshmi, she is a great musician. I am saying MS Subbulakshmi because she was also a devotee of God. So her way of doing Karma Yoga was, and so how many people are, yesterday or day before I was in somebody's house in Kanpur who are from North India, they have nothing to do with South India, and her bhajans are playing in their house. because so she is giving joy to so many people. So it's not that you have to only serve the poor, but if you want to, God bless you. There are different ways of doing karma yoga, but it is not for yourself, not for me, not for me. The whole burden, they say, is I, me, mine. Mera kya hoga? What will happen to me? So our whole life is revolving around that. A little bit of this karma yoga slowly frees you from that. And you have to be always careful, because name, fame, respect of people, you're such a good man, you're doing so much good work, all these things will come. The moment you swallow that, again you're gone. You have to be detached from everything. Whatever name, fame, respect. So there are some practical ways of trying to deal with this. Even because even this unselfish work can bind you if you're not careful. So for those who are devoted to God, some people are, some people are not. You offer all your good work to God. Krishna Arpanam. Keep on doing it every day, morning and evening. Aaj maine ye kiya. Hey Prabhu, if I have done anything good, you do it. Keep on doing it out. You will see that it makes a change. As simple as that. It seems too simple, but that's what it is. If you don't believe in God, the Buddha used to say that you do it because it gives you joy. You help others, maja aata hai. That's also okay. You do not for your own sake, but for the sake of spreading joy around. If you are a gnani, some people don't believe in God to that extent. They are more, the gnani type. Then you say, through this process of karma yoga, I am purifying myself. It does purify you. There is no doubt. Vivekananda himself says it, and he cannot be telling lies. It purifies you, and through the purity, I am able to detach myself. And the whole process of Jnana Yoga is to detach yourself from the body-mind complex, and slowly, slowly you get whatever realization they say you get. If you are a yogi, which is the Raja Yoga meditation, then you are the yagna. I offer my mind, my body, my soul, my talents for the greater public good. So, I was just thinking yesterday, in the Gita he says that Yagna Nam Japa Yagnosmi. I mean, Yagna, something like that. He says, among the Yagnas, Krishna says, I am Japa. So I sometimes feel that if he said, among the Karma Yogas, I am this, among, the practical action, I am the Karma Yoga, he would probably say if he was there. It is that simple. And an example of I myself am the Yagna is Swami Kalyanananda. He tells Vivekananda, when Vivekananda says, what is my Guru Dakshina? He says, I am your Guru Dakshina. So he offered everything he had. Tan, man, dhan, whatever, his mind, his emotions, his talent, everything he offered, you can say to the Guru or for the public service or whatever it is. That is another attitude you can take. That's a very high level, but it's a good thing to do. And what do you do if you're an atheist? It still works. Because many of my friends are atheists. A little bit leftist, but they're full of compassion and they have no self-interest. I know them. I can tell you offline some of those guys. I have not seen any trace of ego. They're full of compassion. They spend their whole life working for others. Their mind also gets purified. Have you heard of Bhagat Singh? He claimed to be an atheist. Well, we have to believe him. At the age of 23, he died. And he says, without any thought of reward in this life or hereafter, I willingly gave my life for the country because I could not do otherwise. What does it remind you of? What does it remind you of? Karmanyevadhikaraste. He is doing exactly the same thing. He has dedicated himself for a larger cause without any thought for his own reward. It is Karma Yoga only. Just because you believe in God or don't believe in God, Vivekananda is the only man who would have said, yes, he is a man worthy of respect. Traditional people say, no, he's an atheist, he's a communist, kind of. But that is the broadness of Vivekananda. So it doesn't matter what your belief is. But what is the secret of all these things? Selfishness. The whole burden is me. How do I liberate myself? And the Karma Yoga is a very powerful way of doing it. That is what Vivekananda says. And you may find that if you try to practice it, you will not only have fun, you will help others, it may actually work, it actually does work. Now, does it work only for monks and sannyasis and tyagis? What about ordinary people like you and me? Actually, Vivekananda said his special interest is the householder. He says it in his complete works. He says there only be 1% or 0.1% or 1 out of 10,000 or 1. Every year, I believe 30 or 40 people join the Ramakrishna mission. What is the population of India? So rest of us has to be condemned to nothing. He says no. Everybody has to get some spiritual benefit. So it is for everybody. And I'll give you some examples. I don't know whether they will feel annoyed if I give their names. But I know 3 or 4 people who are extremely wealthy. They're all famous people. And they help us in our social work. You know, you meet many wealthy people. At least I meet many wealthy people. But I'm singling out these 3 for one reason. They have no trace of ego. Success, usually what happens with success is whatever kind of success, whether it is money or intelligence or something, little bit of this thing comes, you know. Maybe kuch hu, I'm something, which is good at a young age, but somewhere you have to. I've seen no trace of ego in these guys. They just are so normal. Without some kind of grace, such to digest so much wealth and still remain humble is very rare. In fact, I don't see the reason for hiding the names. One of them is a founder of Infosys, whom many people respect, called Chris Gopalakrishnan. Another is Vikram Lal, who lives in Delhi, who's one of the owners of Eicher Motors, and Anu Aga, who owns most of the shares of Thermax. These are 3 people that I have met. There must be many others. And then our dear friends, Ramesh Kacholia, Ashish Kacholia, etc. They spend their whole life doing social work. They have stepped out from all their boards, everything, made a lot of money, they left everything, they devote their time to social work. And you have to, you know, you won't see any flamboyance. You have to be with them, move with them. Then you'll suddenly say, this man is so simple and natural in spite of all his wealth. Then you see, and he's happy. He or she, they are happy. That is the litmus test, they are happy. Now, is it only for the rich? No. I know many people, see, one of the privileges of doing so-called pretending to do social work that I have found in the last 20 years is, you meet gems of people. People of different religions, different castes, people from North India, South India, East India, West India, highly educated people, not so educated people, middle class people, poor people also. There are 2-3 things. The litmus test is they have a lot of compassion, they are genuine, they want to work for the people. They have almost no trace of ego. In fact, the people I really admire, I don't see any trace of ego at all in them. They're very simple. They don't try to prove that they're something great. So there are a lot of people who can practice it. And many of them practice it without even having read Vivekananda. Of course, everybody in India has heard of Vivekananda, but they have caught the spirit of it. So it is for everyone. So the point I'm really trying to make is, it is not that you have to, if you want to give up the world and devote yourself to God, God bless you, please do it. But if you don't want to do that, you can still practice it. It is not very difficult, it's very simple. Now, are any preparations required? That you figure out yourself, or maybe Swamiji will guide you. But a few things you may want to keep in mind. Introspection is important. Just blind act, karma doesn't mean just going on working. You have to think. Introspection, why am I doing this? Am I genuinely doing it in an unselfish spirit? You may not succeed every day, but if you keep on doing introspection, it becomes better. You can fool the whole world, but you cannot fool whom? Whom can you not fool? So you will know why you are doing what. And if there is a problem, if you believe in God, say, hey Prabhu, please remove this king from my mind. Otherwise, you figure out what to do. So introspection is one preparation you have to do. The other thing, since we are in IIT Kanpur, I just wanted to mention, most of all the students are in the top 1% or 0.1 percentile and all that. You have a special talent, intelligence. Use it, learn as much as you can, gain some real knowledge. So Vivekananda says, a beggar cannot renounce. You have to gain something, learn something, prepare yourself. That knowledge, that intelligence you can offer to society. It's not just necessarily going and cleaning toilets. If you want to do that, you are welcome to do it. But whatever best talent you have, you develop it fully and then go and offer it to society, something grander will happen. So that is the only preparation that comes to mind when we talk about this. So let me stop here. And once again, I would like to thank IIT Kanpur, Vivekananda Samiti, Venkat for giving us the opportunity. And thanks to Swamiji who has taken the trouble to come here today. Pranams and thank you, Swamiji. So let me stop here. So he said that there could be some discussion. So if there are any questions, we can take it now or we'll after Swamiji. Okay. Okay. Ask.
Would you like to explain a little bit more about this idea of detachment? It's very easy to say you shouldn't be attached to whatever you're doing and do the work.
I am not a right person to explain. Swamiji will explain, but I'll tell you what blunders I have made in that respect. You see, when you do action, there are two kinds of, when they say karmanyema adhikaraste, nama phaleshu kadachana, this is a very famous one. I used to think, what is this? Should you not care about results? Then say yoga karmasya kaushalam. That means he who is a yogi, he is very good in it. You do everything with full concentration. So when Vivekananda was trying to shoot that eggshell which was bobbing, he shot it. It did not miss it. So what is that result that you don't care about? To my mind, it is the internal results. The phal is internal in the sense that name, fame, ego gratification, all those things, don't accept it. Don't accept it. If it comes, hey Prabhu, tujhe arpan. I don't take. Don't accept any psychological impressions on the mind. But you have to work with full concentration and get the output. This is my understanding. I could be wrong, but it seems to work. So that is a kind of a detach. Don't accept anything. One day I told my guru, "Arey social work karte hain, to log itni वाह वाह करते हैं." I mean, he said, "Don't accept it. Just leave it like that. Don't take it." That is a detachment. That's what I have understood.
I think that's one perspective. The other one is where you don't actually get success. You're working, you're trying to do all the best.
Sometimes you don't get success.
If you have success, then you'll be sure. You don't really motivated by that. What if you end up with a failure?
Correct.
If your failure shows you
Yeah.
concern and commitment.
Right. So actually, to my understanding, if you are working in a selfless way, to the extent we are capable of working in a selfless way, you don't feel disappointed. If you are working for yourself selfishly, you will feel disappointed. Gandhi, the great man, said, two things I discarded, fear and failure. I discarded. Matlab, you do your best, that is it. Success or failure hoga, nahi hoga, after that there is nothing. So that's what they say. And to some extent it works. If you work not for yourself but in an unselfish way, failure will come, but you will not feel disappointed.
But I think at the same time you have to find out that all the failures.
Yeah, try better next time. Try better next time. See, it's all a question of why we are doing it. If this world and the success here is of paramount interest and we give importance to this, then we will be endlessly doing that only. This is the Vivekananda said, this is a gymnasium for purifying the mind and soul and getting out of it. If you work from that perspective, it doesn't matter.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, is it not like feeling disappointed? It's something like a key for improvement. It will force you to improve yourself.
Sure. I mean, if you see, whatever you think from inside is correct for you. There is another Maha Mantra that actually Vivekananda himself says, if a man's faith is sincere, do not disturb. If you sincerely feel that disappointment will help you to improve, you please stick to that idea. But don't say that is the only idea. You stick to it and follow it. It will work. That is the other thing. There is no one way. You discover your own way. Why introspection and being sincerity?
Yeah, like means sometimes fear also make us to prepare for the means fear also sometimes help us to prepare for the worst scenario.
That's true. That is true. That's true.
So that fear in something Gandhiji told fear in failure. So fear and failure sometimes shape our path. It is like that. So
Good. If it works for you, please follow it. Okay. Thank you.